Hold the phone and stop the press. I signed off on the last interview because I thought we were finished, but oh no, guess who's here? Hey, hopefully he's not breathing fire. Gavin Duffy, Dragon.
Jules,
welcome.
How are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
Oh, I'm fantastic. It's been a wonderful event here, the All Ireland Summit here in Croke Park. What a great venue. But I think any venue where you have so many business people coming together, just that tangible buzz and energy that's around the place is fantastic.
Yeah, you can really feel it today. Now, I would consider that you'd be one of the busiest men in the country, and you've taken time out to be here with us today, but in a slightly different role maybe, a supportive role, is that right?
You heard that, yes. My business partner, but more importantly, life partner, wife, Orla, was speaking here today about something that we find is growing to be a very big issue for companies in Ireland, and that is doing diversity and inclusion programs where you're working with staff to make people think more as regards diversity and inclusion, because we tend to employ people like ourselves a lot, and of course particularly if we're customer facing or if we're consumer facing, but the market, people in the marketplace have become so diverse. So she was talking about that and how companies need to change and be more diverse. And I have to say it was a very interesting talk. So I was looking forward to hearing it.
Yes?
Yeah, I was looking forward to hearing it, and it was so well received in the hall. But I think all the speakers, they've been fantastic. Funny enough, the lady who spoke after Orla, Sinead Kane, is somebody that Orla had coached as a speaker, and it's great to see Sinead blossoming into such a brilliant, inspirational, motivational speaker. Then it was great to see the awards being presented, and I have to say, across the various categories, as I looked up, most of the ones that I picked were winners. So I'd like to say your judges were on the button.
Point.
At least I agreed with them, Jules.
That's fantastic. Well, we've been talking all day about the energy that's here and the opportunities to meet people face to face. And, we can promote ourselves on sites, websites, social media, LinkedIn, but there's something special about meeting somebody face to face, I think. Shaking their hand, engaging in eye contact, hearing the tone of their voice. Do you agree with that and everything that's been happening here today for networking?
Yeah, well, look, there's no doubt the more high-tech the world becomes, the more high-touch people want to be. So the reason conferences like this are very successful and growing is people like to get out and actually press the flesh. There's no doubt about that. I suppose the coach in me would always say to people, make sure that you don't tell people your job title, but actually tell them about the solution you provide. So, for example, you might meet somebody here and you say, oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm an accountant. And with respect to an accountant, a plumber, whatever it would be, you're more or less thinking, yes, so what? Whereas if somebody says to me, hi Gavin, I'm somebody who could help you with your taxes or something like that, that's a different conversation. And suddenly you're interested and engaged. So, there are simple little things that people can do when they are networking that make a big difference to the end result and having a more productive conversation. But what I loved was all of the business that's going on around the conference hall. It's just fantastic.
So I'm thinking of people who are watching at home who may not have been able to make it today and are thinking...
Well, you've missed out.
Yeah,
you've missed
big time.
Big opportunity.
And they're thinking, 2018, I'm going to be there with bells on. If I thought that I could go up to Gavin Duffy and shake his hand and maybe impress you in some way or just even ask you for advice, what would be your top tips for approaching somebody and wanting to make an impression on them?
Okay, well, I'm delighted you're saying they'd like to come up and shake my hand. I thought somebody might want to come up and throw a thump at me. But what I would say to people is have a compelling proposition. There's so much noise going on in the world. You really do have to be able to provide a solution. And then if your solution is not unique, you've got to convince somebody very quickly that yours is at a better price point, or we're going to work a lot harder for you. Now, I know that sounds very obvious when it's said, but you'd be surprised how few people sort of really concentrate and make sure they deliver that when they're meeting somebody or engaging with somebody. It's good, solid sales experience, I suppose, that makes me say that and advise people to do that. But it is something that people don't concentrate enough on. They just think, oh, it's meeting somebody. And if I give them my spiel, and I always find that having a series of good questions works much better than having a spiel. So you'll meet somebody and say, oh, Gavin, delighted to meet you. Can I tell you about, and they're into a spiel, etc. Whereas if somebody says, you know, Gavin, do you have a business issue at the moment around, and they pick something specific, and it might be, you know, do you feel you're recruiting the best people or something like that? Well, of course I'm going to be engaged, because now they're talking about my business and something that might help my business, you know. And think a little outside the box.
Is it important to be remembered to make an impact like that?
Ah, yes, it is. It is. This is the aforementioned person I was talking about, Orlaith Carmody.
Hi, Orlaith. So how are you getting on today, Orlaith?
This is the lovely Jules.
Hi, Jules. Hi. Nice to meet you too.
This happens when you're doing stuff live.
Let's just roll with it. Fantastic. We love the spontaneity of live videos.
We touched on your talk about diversity and inclusion, but how significant it has become for Irish businesses to engage with it.
It's absolutely huge. I think it's going to be the big training and development piece throughout 2017 and forward. It kind of was at one point all about gender diversity, and we've made great strides there. Lots more to do, but we've made great strides. But now we have to look at it quite differently. We have to look at it as an all-inclusive, and diversity and inclusion is the big piece. And the single barrier to diversity and inclusion I was describing in my talk is unconscious bias. And unconscious bias, being unconscious, is something we mightn't be actually aware we're carrying, and we're all carrying little biases of some description or another. And the training we do is around showing scenarios acted out, everyday office scenarios where somebody says something that upsets the other person and never realises they're actually doing it. And that's what it is to make people just aware of it.
The intricacies of just simple human behaviours.
Absolutely. Everyday dynamic in every workplace. And for everybody, every individual to say, okay, do I carry unconscious biases? I gave an example of a young man who really has the feeling that he is very inclusive. So he says, I accept feedback and I'm aware of all my colleagues and I don't carry any sort of attitude. I'm welcoming all races, colours and creeds. And yet in the scenario that's played out, he is totally blind to his lovely, petite, female Asian colleague. He just doesn't see her, doesn't register her. And at the end of the working week, it's the Friday evening, and he says, come on, we'll all go off to the usual place. And off they go. She's Asian, there's a language barrier. She doesn't understand what the usual place means, that it means go for a pint on a Friday to celebrate. And even if she did, she doesn't know where the usual place is. How could she go there? And they've all just excluded her without ever meaning to. It's no bad intent, but they just completely excluded their colleagues. So it's little scenarios like that, and that's why it's so important.
Simple unconscious awareness of just kind of opening your eyes to all of these those things. That's absolutely brilliant to think that that's being taught in the workplace. Amazing.
Well, the major financial institutions, the banks, right across the arts, right across government departments, they are really looking at this for the first time in our history, and it's very exciting. It's very exciting work to be a part of.
I really do think we should give credit to AIB, because they have been perhaps at the forefront of bringing it to their organisation. I think others will follow suit. But the thing about Orlaith's programme, when it's in a company, it is the role plays that are done, and people actually do see themselves. Oh gosh, I've done that, And we've all done it. We don't realise the little things we do, and it's just to create that awareness. And you don't have to do much more than that. Once people are aware of
It's
it.
great crack as well.
Well, it is.
It's bonding as
you
well.
do
for
it
the
in a
staff.
humorous way, and you do it in a quite a funny, humorous way, but there's a serious intent and there's serious messaging as well, because the two ways you change behaviour, or you actually allow for diversity and inclusion, is to do this kind of consciousness raising and awareness, and then the second thing you have to do is to put in some processes to actually design or engineer diversity. And that's all about, say, for example, blind screening of CVs. So before you read CVs, when there's a new position coming up, you take off name, date of birth, gender, background, so you don't see any of those things that you might form a judgment
Which I'm all
over.
for, because that way I might get a job.
And then you look
Take
at,
my age out.
absolutely. Ageism is a huge thing.
Yes.
But you just look at the skills and talents and you say, okay, we'll call 5 of those people in for an interview, and you'd be surprised who walks in the door that day of the interview.
Jules, I'm ageist in another way. I sometimes say, oh, that young one, what would they know? So like it works both ways. Shame on me, please don't judge me.
Yeah, but at least you're honest. I like that.
I know, but you have to be sort of aware of it. And in fact, that's what I loved about doing Dragon's Den. I'm 57 on my next birthday. I know I don't look it, but I'm 57 on my next birthday. And I think, I started Dragon's Den when I was 48, right? But in my late 40s, I was becoming one of these boring old fogies. I was beginning to say, no, we won't try that. We tried that in the 80s and it didn't work. I was one of those people. And what Dragon's Den did was meeting dynamic, young, brilliant, capable people who, yes, were naive. In the middle of the mother of all recessions, they believed their business was going to be a huge success. And I've just loved working with them, the energy that comes from that. And therefore, I think it's a pity that companies don't reach out and try and have a very diverse workforce, because it'll energise your business, doesn't it?
Well, the buzz here today is absolutely fabulous, and you look around you and you see how multicultural we have become in Ireland. Just look around you, it's right here at the All Ireland Business Summit, and it's fantastic, and we just love the energy and the people who, these are our people, the people who we work with all the time, who are startups, who are the corporates with an entrepreneurial streak, if you like, rather than an entrepreneurial streak. But the buzz that is coming from these people is just fantastic, and I apologise for landing into the middle of your couch and your sofa, Jules. I was speaking to a load of people there.
Myself and Jules were getting on very well.
Well, I was speaking to a lot of the people here and getting to know who was here today, and they hauled me by the collar and told me to come down here and land on your sofa.
I'm
so I
delighted
did.
that you joined us. One question that I did want to ask you. As a high achiever,
That's you.
That's me.
you've achieved an awful lot.
Apparently.
Do you still have big goals in the
Yeah.
future? What is on your list of things to tick?
I really have a few big things that I believe are going to be huge. So,
You sound like Trump. They're going to be
if
huge.
I
Huge. And huge.
bigly, tremendous. But Jules, if I told you about one or two of them, I'd have to kill you, and you're
Okay.
far too nice. Yeah, I think there's at least one other global success or European success inside me that I won't be happy until I've that done. And then there's a few other things that are...
I think you have to always believe that the best is yet to come. That no matter how much you've achieved in life so far, that there's great things ahead of you. Because if you stop believing that, well, why would you get out of bed in the morning? So no matter what your current scenario or situation is, I think really it's a mindset. Believe that the best has yet to come. And tomorrow might be the day you meet that person who sets something in motion. You might bump into somebody right here who gives you that piece of business, who invites you to take part in that event, and that leads to something else. And there's always, I mean, I'm not a cup half full person. I think I'm a cup 90% full person. I think you are the same. And I think that makes you see that possibility, and you want other people to see that possibility as well.
Yeah, but
Keeps
Orla,
the drive, yes.
Yeah.
I think the secret is not to be driven by money.
I was going to ask you that. Is life better when you're loaded?
That is. There's no doubt.
They're creature
And
comforts,
I think in our case we were very lucky to be wealthy in our very early, in our early 30s.
But we worked very hard for it.
Well, yeah, we said it,
worked
but like
very
relative
hard
to
for
the
it.
population,
Yeah.
certain things took off and so on. But I've realised later on that it's challenging yourself. I mean, I suppose we could have gone off and become beach bums or something like
Put
that.
it this way, we're not going to take up golf or bridge anytime soon. We've a lot still to
Drive
do.
is still there. I love that.
Yeah.
So what is it that gives you the biggest thrill these days?
I think it is, if you're an entrepreneur, we're really sick people, you know that? It is people saying to you, that'll never work, Gavin. What? You know, that's what really
the teeth.
that's what really drives me. And I think, funny enough, you know, one of the things I'm going to do is so counter the current market trend that yes, a lot of people think I'm going to be mad, but
Would you thrive on that?
yeah, I could be wrong, you know. But here's the thing, I suppose, for us in business. You know, now this will be something bigger than a Dragon's Den punt. It'll be quite a few million of a punt. But, you know, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I prefer to have tried it than not try it. But I think it's going to be huge, as Donald had said.
There's a list of
It'll be big in China. China is over beside Japan, apparently.
But if there's a list of successes, there is equally a list of failures. And we could keep you here all day talking about the failures. But they're all the things you tried and didn't work, which we don't shout about.
This is the
We
final
shout
thing
about
I'd say
the
to you.
ones that do work. Yeah.
Jules, you kindly said I'm successful. Our success is being able to hide our failures.
Yes.
Because everybody in business, you have a number of failures. I've never had wipeout. And I don't have an eye for success, but I do have a nose for failure. And when a business is failing, and I tend to then cut my losses, pay my debts, and move on, write it off. And that's the real secret. Too many people gamble the entire house, and I'm not sure you should do that. And they read the business textbooks and they hear, oh, Walt Disney failed, 130 times before he eventually cracked animation, or
Or J.K. Rowling, you always hear about that,
exactly,
all the rejections of the book
and so on. But I am sure a Henry Ford, an Edison, a Walt Disney, they weren't doing exactly the same thing. They tweaked it, they improved it, etc. And I always say to people, make sure you're leaning your ladder against the correct wall, because the same energy goes into a really successful business as one that's just ticking over.
But I'd say all those people you mentioned, they must have had great reserves of resilience. They must have had. They couldn't have kept failing all those times and kept going without resilience and without a belief, an absolute belief that what they were doing was right. And probably the thing that was driving them was the impact it was going to have rather than the money it was going to make. Walt Disney could visualise children, families, day out, theme park. He could just see it. It was all about what he was going to create for the families, not the money he was going to make. The money he made on it was a kind of a happy coincidence nearly at the end of it. And a lot of times I think with entrepreneurs, the ones who are really successful, the thing that is driving them, the thing that gets them out of bed in the morning, the thing that keeps them going despite the failures, is the realisation that this product or service is going to actually change the world and make a difference. And that's what drives them.
We tend to talk about sort of entrepreneurs from different parts of the world. A very good friend of ours, Ray Coll, spoke to me a few years ago, and he said he was going to open a theme park in Curraha in County Meath, which, to me would be the back end of nowhere, although I'm from County Meath myself. And as he was explaining it to me, I thought he was completely mad. I was wondering, did he need medication? And Tato Park is now a huge success.
Phenomenon.
And he did it in the middle of the worst recession ever. He said he'd build this field and they would come. That's what entrepreneurs do. It's their resilience.
You gotta believe,
and now there's hundreds of people working in Tato Park. There's hundreds of thousands of visitors, and it is catching up with the Guinness Storehouse. It's only number 2 to it at the moment. So, wow, amazing.
So believe in your dream, the law of attraction.
That's it.
Yeah. Form an alliance.
Correct.
That's another thing, definitely, I would say, isn't it?
Yeah.
Having that energy of 2 heads are better than 1.
That
Well,
helps.
we would say that,
Yeah.
yes, as a partnership.
Yeah. I would always suggest trying to get somebody who's more agreeable than Orla. But look,
Who has the last word between the two of you?
Thank you.
You are such a wise man, isn't he?
Well, I think so. I think he knows the 2 most important words in the English language, and they are yes, dear.
I love that. Well, thank you both so much
Thank
for joining
you.
us,
Thanks,
for all those great tips for everybody watching at home. And we'll see you again, hopefully, here next year.
Thank you.
We will indeed. We'll be back.
Well, thank you all so much for tuning in today on Facebook Live. My name is Jules Coll. I'm here with GTM Events, and this is what we do. We live stream, we interview for brands, products, you name it, get in touch with us. From all of us here at Croke Park after an incredible, amazing day full of networking and amazing energy. Thank you.